Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today is May 1st in the year of our Lord 2023. And we're going to take a deep dive into all things political, all things dealing with current, political events in America. Always our goal is we're coming on to try and solve. We came into a MAGA era and left a MAGA era. We're still threatened currently by another MAGA era. But in the coming of the MAGA era, politics got real twisted. They got real corrupt and tainted and just so polarized. So Soluble came as a means to just what it means. It stands for to try to solve. First and foremost, by telling it like it is and, not letting politicians, whether it be Democrat or Republican, spin on the answer, change the subject, digress, if you will. We're not going to let them do it. And so, in doing so, we plan to give you all the facts so you will know, where things stand to keep you on solid ground because, politics can have you on shaky ground. It can have you on what is there a shaky footing. And so in this new age of power sharing, and this is important for all Democrats, the 90-something percentile, the 90-something plus percentile people of color in particular, we're power sharing now. And we have to keep the momentum. We have to keep our foot on the gas if we're going to drive this democracy down the road of equality, social justice, good paying jobs, equal, better treatment for women, whether it has to do with a woman's right to choose, maternity leave, and all those type of things. Now, historically, and you can go back and fact check Soluble on this, but historically, the economy has done better under Democrats than it has Republicans. Historically, I think this, you might go back as far as Kennedy, and come forward from there. The economy has pretty much done better under Democratic administrations, and the last thing we want to do is politicize it. So, although we are adamantly and staunchly Democrat, we're going to call balls and strikes like we see them, because, as I said, what would we be solving if we didn't? If we didn't try to speak truth to power, fact check, whatever opinion, whatever statement, and to give the American people an understanding of what we think works best for America. Now, it's official. The president has come out. He was at a Union Hall last week somewhere in Pennsylvania, I think Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken. But it is official. And you heard the chants. The president was there in the working class environment, with the working class, what politicians otherwise refer to as the middle class. But he announced right there in the Union Hall, and you heard the chants. And we can't help but to get behind him. The president looks fit, vigorous, in spite of his age, and he looks like a commander in chief who's ready to lead America in the right direction. But we heard the chants, let's go Joe, let's go Joe, and we're gonna have to get behind our candidate like never before. We see that more or less the former president, as hard as this is to believe, with in spite of an insurrection, pathologically lying, botching the COVID response, just blatant corruption, all the social unrest. In spite of all this, the former president is somehow leading in the Republican polls. So, we have to definitely put MAGA down again. We've proven that in spite of the lies, in spite of the accusations, we proved that there was a free and fair election. But we know that was by also a slim margin. That was a slim majority of victory. So we have to get behind our candidate 100%. until the party makes a decision. I mean, we're going to block out, and we should, as Democrats, we should block out all the outside noise about he's too old. Nikki Haley is coming and saying things like, he could possibly die in office. Forget that. As Democrats, we have to rally behind our guy until the party makes a decision that, the president is not fit for another 4 years. And we can be confident in that because, as I've said, the president is a long-standing patriotic servant of the country, serving in government. You may or may not have liked his policies, but he's been a student of government. He's been a servant, if you will, to the people in his district and all throughout the United States of America, most of his adult life. And we trust and believe that because we know the president loves his country, he will be the first to announce that, I'm not able to do it. He's not there for power, for glory, to make rich friends. He's not there for none of that. To have, art imitating real life and running, the country like it's a reality show, affecting people's and playing with people's daily lives. He's not in it for none of that. So we have to understand, for democracy's sake, even if the president is, pushing 80 years, a propped up Joe Biden is better than a walking around healthy to walk, places and hold his head up, on his own, Donald Trump. Again, I'll say it again. A Joe Biden, a President Joseph Biden, propped up is better for America and American democracy any day than slowly but surely walking Donald Trump. So it's more important than ever for democracy's sake that we rally behind our guy. Now, we know the issues. We know the issues, on both sides when it comes to, Democrats being for the middle class and, the Republicans, they're mainly representing the 1%. But they've mixed just enough racism in with that 1% to make a lot more of America go along. And they're duped all the way. Republicans care zero about it. But they know that, they need to blend something like that in, some patriotic type rhetoric that, represents love for one's country, patriotic duty to keep America civil and crime free. We got infiltrators or the deep state, all these made up things. So, it's voter beware, always. Always, it's voter beware. Now, as I said, it's really a head scratcher. One could not, foresee that the former president would be where he's at now in today's polls. Where he's at now in today's polls. And, there'll be another time and another place for the discussion on, why a Donald Trump presidency can never happen again. There'll be plenty of time to discuss that at a later date. For now, as Democrats, we need to staunchly rally behind our guy, as I said. Now, touching on one of the things that we need to get our Democratic politicians and our candidates to do, we really need them to be more vocal, more forcefully vocal, if you will, when it comes to stumping, speaking up, talking to bring a law into effect. When they're on the podium or when they're up on the hill, or when they're in front of the press, we need them to take a hardcore, forcefully vocal stance for the laws, the legislation that we've sent them to Washington, D.C. to not only get up, on the floor for a vote, to be passed into law. We give our Republican colleagues much credit for being, very vocal, very forcefully vocal with pushing a false narrative. And, that's what lets us know as Democrats that we really need to focus in on this because, oftentimes a false narrative is changing the voters' mind. or, making the voter decide that I just won't go to the polls altogether. Or, there are two candidates here, Biden and Trump, and I'll vote for Mickey Mouse. So, forcefully vocal with a false narrative is a very, dangerous thing. And the Republicans spin it. They do it well. It's part of the Republican playbook. It consists of fear mongering, false statements, misstatements, misleading of facts. Definitely fear mongering to scare the voter. And so, it's really important that we're up on it. Going forward, our mission here at Soluble is to, keep you aware. It's like, we're gonna have to be forceful with our message here at Soluble to the extent of, like, we're beating a dead horse here. But that's one thing that we know we need to get the Democrats, our candidates who are up on the hill or who are holding elected office, to get out and take a vocal stance for the legislation that we're backing, that we want to see put up on the floor for a vote. You're in the majority. You've been voted into office for a reason. There's no need to be bashful, timid, unsure. This is what we sent you to Washington, D.C. to do. This is what we sent you here to do. And we know that, our party is for the middle class, working people who are, after a piece of the pie, and or even a piece, several pieces, even half of it. The Democratic Party is the party to best level that playing field for the working class, the middle class. Is it the party of perfection? Is it the party that has all the answers for America's problems? No, we're not going to go there here at Soluble. But as I've said, check things out, when it comes to the economy. Historically, has it fared better under Democratic administrations or Republican administrations? Do your research. It's very important. The economy is not doing so well right now. We're not in a recession, but at the same time, we have some indicators that are saying that, if we don't turn things around, then we could possibly face a recession. And so, we have things in sane hands. We have things in sane hands with, Democratic leadership who are going to work with the Treasury Secretary, work with, listen to economists, leading experts in the field of economy, and make decisions that are best for everyone. They've tweaked the interest rate. They've lowered it here. They've raised it here. They raised it again to cool off inflation. So it's working. Is it worked out? No, by no means. Prices are up. Wages are still stagnant at most. And so, with that being said, it's even more important that we don't change course now, that we give this another 4 years. Now the president came out, we left the MAGA, Make America Great Again era, and we came into the Build Back Better era. Build Back Better. And now the president is asking for another 4 years, and he's saying, let's finish the job. We owe him that. We owe him that. He ran for the sake of America. He didn't have to run. He was badgered, hounded, stalked. He was paparazzi'd, because that's how desperate the American people were to bring someone in who could beat the former president, Donald Trump, and stop the insane madness and the downward spiral that he had America in. The Republic was in a downward spiral, let's face it. And, this constitutional menace was a clear and present danger. And as I said, America, wouldn't let the president rest. So he's saying, let's finish the job. We owe him that. We owe him that. Could he, win another term, get into his second year, and, God forbid, drop dead of a heart attack? Yes, it's possible. Anything is possible. But that's why we have a backup. That's why we have a vice president. The system works. So at the end of the day, We owe the president. We owe it to him to let him run, give him a chance to finish the job. And, if he can't, he'll bow gracefully. Or as I said, God forbid, in the words of Governor Haley, he may not make it through. But, at the end of the day, it's all in the hands of the Almighty. So until he moves his hand, or until the president says, I can't do this, it's too much, let him run. Let's go, Joe. And let's get behind that. We're dealing with the debt ceiling. It's looming. The debt ceiling is really looming here. It's looming large. Now, the debt ceiling was raised under the former president several times with bipartisan effort. With a bipartisan effort, the debt ceiling was raised. There was no threat of default, none whatsoever. Now we have, the other party, the Democratic Party, in charge. We're not going to politicize it. This is balls and strikes, ladies and gentlemen. This is telling it like it is in order to solve it. Did we not? This is something that here at Soluble we are stating. But the facts are the facts, no matter what Soluble states. Did we not raise the debt ceiling several times under the former president? It wasn't a problem. Bipartisan effort, bipartisan support. Now we have the Republicans with a slim majority in the House, come forward with all these proposals, these cuts. They want to gut the president's agenda. They want to take it away altogether. And one thing that they want to do, and we as Democrats, this is, a real important reason to hold a line when it comes to election day. And by holding the line, you're keeping your numbers up. You're keeping your turnout up. This is one of the most reasons why it's real important. They want to go after the president on his bill that strengthens the IRS. Now think about this. The president has said, he needs to beef it up. There are several reasons: antiquated machines, staffing shortages, better able to go after people who are dodging their taxes. And that's real important as Democrats. This is real important for another 4 years. But the Republicans want this gone. If going after tax cheats or people who are not paying their fair share, and listen to me real good, ladies and gentlemen, if going after tax cheats and people who are not paying their fair share will help the deficit, then what is the problem there? Because, you can't have it both ways. And this is what the Republicans want. And this is why, as Democrats, we need to remain vigilant. We can't be asleep at the wheel on this. You don't want to go after tax cheats and people who are not paying their fair share, which could lower the deficit. Then at the same time, you're complaining that the deficit is out of control. How can you have it both ways here? If the deficit is so out of control, anything we can do to lower it, we ought to be doing it. Again, I say, if the deficit, as the Republicans claim, is out of control, and we here at Soluble believe that, we can do better. But if the deficit is so out of control, why not go after people who are not paying their fair share and tax cheats if it can help lower the deficit? So this is real important. We need to think about it. But, this is one of these things where, if you study long, you're going to study wrong. Now, the former president came into office, and that was the first thing he did. Give a tax break to the wealthy. Because, hey, in the former president's eyes and mind, and Republicans alike, they're hurting. They're hurting. And this is the Republicans. Balls and strikes. If it applies to Democrats, we're going to go after them too. But you hear them talk about crime. How we just, crime is out of control. There's a white collar crime here to my fellow Democrats. It's important that we turn out. There's a white collar crime going on here. And the president is trying to enact legislation into law that can help go after tax cheats and people who are not paying their fair share. There's a white collar crime going on here that's robbing the American Treasury, and we get it. At Soluble here, we get it. You know, the first thing that Republicans are going to push back on is to say that, you know, they're taxing the wealthy and putting the money into entitlements. We have opposition there. You know, we have a problem with certain entitlements that we feel like as Democrats we do need to address. But the system works. You know, when you're paying your fair share, we have a system of checks and balances there to detect fraud, to detect, you know, cronyism, to detect, you know, bribery, any kind of financial schemes. We have a system of checks and balances there to that protects that. So it's really it's really kind of a null and void argument. It's something like, you know, what, you know, you'll hear politicians call a red herring. It's just a distraction. That's all it is. Just something meant to, you know, take your mind off of what's really going on. So, you know, we're dealing with a looming deficit, and we need to raise the debt ceiling in order to pay America's bill. And, you know, this is what currently in the moment we have Republicans doing, you know, flirting with disaster. Flirting with disaster. How could you, as I said, you want it both ways? You want to, you know, take away from the infrastructure bill or whatever that the president has accomplished thus far. Leading economists right now, leading economists have said, do not try to put, you know, any to attach any strings to raising the deficit. I mean, to you know, putting the money forth to pay America's bills, to raising the debt ceiling. Leading economists have stated that there need to be no strings attached, no playing around with it. We're already coming out of a pandemic that had, you know, supply chains backed up, you know, people losing their jobs. And, you know, supply and demand was, you know, really turned upside down. And so forth had prices. So, you know, coming out of all that, as I said, the president is, you know, he's turning levers over here, he's pulling switches over there in this gigantic, ginormous economic machine that America is. He's pushing all the right buttons. Is there still work to do? Yes. Yes, there's definitely work to do. So, you know, it's always voter beware. Voter beware. This is not really, you know, a budget proposal. This is kind of like, you know, in the words of Minority Leader Jeffrey, this is more like a ransom note. Show us, you know, show us the emergency there. And if it is such an emergency, as I said, don't go after, don't attach demands to you know, raising the debt ceiling to pay the bills. Don't attach demands like, you know, going after the IRS, which is going to help the deficit. Don't be fooled. And, you know, this is for Republican voters as well. This is for Republican voters as well. You know, don't be fooled. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I had to check to see if there was rain coming down. But, you know, in dealing with all things political, you know, the next election is right around the corner. It's right around the corner. And, you know, Republicans are stuck in a rut. You know, they're still on this same old song and dance, even though the country has moved on, or the majority of the country. And we live in a country where a majority rules. Now, we're going to see if this is going to, you know, and it should be alarming. If there's another, if the former president wins the nomination and there's another 70 something odd million votes that are out there for him, because we're thinking now after the insurrection, and the court cases. What has happened with Dominion, between Dominion and Fox, with Fox settling, out of court. With all this happening, it's very perplexing. But if with all these things that have happened since the last election, it's going to be interesting to see if there's another 70-something odd million out there that is in the former president's corner. We think here at Soluble it's going to dwindle to the high 60s, but who knows? So better to be safe than sorry. We know the threat. We've seen this movie before. We've seen this MAGA movie before. So we know the threat. We know what's at stake. And so, we need to keep that same energy that we had in 2000, and be ready to use it again, if you will. Energy and motion, as kinetic as we can get it, to the polls, souls to the polls, early voting, etc., etc. Democracy is at stake. What is the plan? As I've said before here, attacking Democrats in a personal way is not a plan forward for America led by Republicans. Now, during the last election, it was Hillary's emails. Now we're coming up on, President Biden. They start talking about Hunter, right before the 2020 election. And Hunter is still in the news. Hunter's still in the news. Hunter is human. To err is human. So, as American citizens, how can we look at, Hunter Biden and the fact that he's the president's son? This is, a threat to the republic. It's smoke and mirrors. It's smoke and mirrors. And so, when Republicans can't, go after Democrats for their record, on the record, if you don't like, President Biden's infrastructure plan, come out on the record and give us something better, or tell us why it's so bad for America that we should vote against it. If you don't like the student debt relief plan, come out with something different. Tell us your stance and why. But we hardly ever get this. We get caught up in these personal things. Right now, President Biden is supporting the woke mob. He's for cancel culture. He's part of cancel culture. His son, Hunter Biden, is a clear and present danger. He's a threat. None of the above represents, a threat to American democracy or our way of life as American citizens. None of it. So don't believe the hype and don't get caught up. As I said, and I'm going to close on it, Republican politicians, it remains to be seen if they can come out and run against President Biden strictly on the record. I think we have a few vacant seats here that are going to, are seats that's up for a vote. They're going to be contested in this next election. I'm not sure what all of them are. I know that Senator Manchin's seat, he's being contested. So we need to take a long look at that. Some say he's a Republican by another name, or how he votes, how his voting record is. But all of it is important. If we can keep a Democratic majority, we're moving forward right now. Now, of course, you're going to hear from the other side that this is wrong, this is bad, this is bad. We here at Soluble, we want politicians to be equal opportunity attackers, if you will. Go at bad policy, regardless of party, with equal zeal. Regardless if it's a Democrat, going after another Democrat, or if it's a Democrat going after a Republican, or vice versa. Go after them with the same equal zeal. So we see it. It's classic right now. This this smoke and mirrors, this partisan politics. You know, for example, you have Congressman Jordan up on the Hill. Now he's trying to get in official state business, trying to get in Alvin Bragg's business to come to the defense of Trump. And the judges have told him to stay out of it. But here he is, trying to save a failed and flawed man as it relates to being president of the United States. Now, when he's asked, will he, call investigations and look into Clarence Thomas' business dealings, his travels with big money donors, billionaires, and this, that, and the third, he has no appetite for it. He has no appetite, no desire, if you will, to go and look into what Chief Justice Thomas has been doing. Jet setting around the world, cruising on the high seas in big money yachts with big money players. That's bought property from him, and his mother still resides there. But Jim Jordan don't want to go after that. He doesn't want to go after that. But he definitely wants to attack Alvin Bragg and go after Alvin Bragg. Why can't these be one and the same? Why can't he be an equal opportunist when it comes to looking into what might be political wrongdoings, briberies, underhanded dealings of whatever nature they might be? Why can't he? And so it's going to be up to the American voter. It's going to be up to the American voter. Looking at this for what it is on its face, and I put it out there. I put out a blatant example of the political biasness here. And, Congressman Jordan says that, he's not going to bring these investigations up against, Justice Thomas because, Democrats have always had it in for him. The facts are the facts, ladies and gentlemen. The facts are the facts. You haven't had Democratic politicians to, get with Mr. Crow and say, we want you to, fly Justice Thomas all around the world and, treat him, spend lavishly on him, and discourage him from disclosing it to the American people so that we can investigate him later. You don't have this. You don't have this. And if you did, he would have something here. This is not a setup by Democrats. This is not about Democrats going after Chief Justice Thomas unwarranted. There's some there. And if not, why not? Why haven't you been given full disclosure? He's had no cases before the court. This is Justice Thomas's plea that Mr. Crow had no cases that come before the court. How do we know this? Because some of his friends have had cases. Could he have hidden his money some kind of way and funneled it through his wife, brother, sister's niece? We don't know this, and we won't know it. Because here you have Republicans with a slim majority in the House, and their only desire, their only heart and mind is to go after Democratic wrongdoing. And so with Democrats in office and with Democrats holding 2/3 of power when it comes to the levels of government, we as Democratic voters are going to have to make sure that our politicians don't fall into the same category, doing the same things. I mean, let the chips fall where they may when it comes to investigating Hunter Biden, the president's son. But at the same time, you have to ask yourself, what does it have to do with, threats to democracy? How does it harm the republic? We have to ask ourselves that. And if we can't find no there where it harms the republic, or there's a threat to democracy, or it compromises President Biden's presidency, if we find none of this, then there's nothing there but political biasness. It's a hatchet job to go after the president and hurt his chances for re-election. Plain and simple. Now, we're not and telling it like it is and putting the facts out there. We're not looking to change Republican minds. We're putting the facts out there. But definitely to Democrats, you have to know that, we need to be on our A game. There's no time to be weary. There's no time to be tired. We're going to trust the doctors who have physicaled the president out and deemed him vigorous and healthy. We're going to trust the doctors. We're going to trust the president. And we're going to keep our agenda moving forward. We're going to keep our agenda moving forward. As we know that right now, what is the problem? Foreign policy is in check. The president's built the coalition. America's leading with a coalition of willing countries, willing partners, leading in a reasonable way. The president has discouraged China right now from attacking Taiwan because they see what's going on with Ukraine and how Russia is just, bungling this attack, this unwarranted, no cause, no reason, no justification attack on this sovereign country. It's going terribly because we have a president in office who knows what he's doing. He's not trying to bribe the Ukrainian president. He's not trying to appease Putin. He gets on the world stage and tells Vladimir Putin just like it is. He calls him a war criminal, a dictator, a tyrant. And here you have the former president, right now the leading candidate, according to the polls, smoothing up to Putin, who has no respect for democracy. What an insult. What a disgrace that a leader of the free world will go and cozy up to some authoritarian like Vladimir Putin, who poisons his own people, who locks people up on trumped-up charges and holds them for ransom just for Russian citizens who are in prison somewhere abroad, more than likely for a legitimate reason. So the stakes couldn't be higher, but that's what we have. Foreign policy is safe. China is discouraged. Russia is blundering. North Korea is saber-rattling as usual, but they're no threat to us. It's simply because, as I said, and I'll say it again, in closing, the president has created a coalition of the willing. It's not a go-it-alone approach. It's not a president going about it with an administration full of actors. So, once again, voter beware. The clock is ticking. The Iowa caucuses are upon us. We have to, even though we're enjoying, our everyday American indulgences, we have the NBA playoffs going on. Baseball season is in full bloom. The hockey playoffs are going on. Whatever the event, sporting, acting, that's a part of Americana. We need to enjoy it, indulge in it, and relish in this moment on this first day of May of 2023. Relish the fact that the president has come in and calmed the seas. He's calmed the waters. The boat was rocking. The president has a smooth sailing again. And there's a lot of things that we have to talk about going forward, that could have an effect on turnout going into the next voting session. Now, for that 90-something plus percentile, people of color, as I said, you're power sharing now. You're power sharing. But in order to maintain that status and stay on that level where, no one's in power over you or have power over you, in order to stay where you are, which is a great place, you have to keep turnout up. And so, we're in that season. We're going to discuss entitlements in the form of welfare. We're going to discuss, issues with the LGBTQ community, which are sticking points for that 90-something plus percentile. And we would, at Soluble here, we would not be doing our just duty if we didn't speak to that group of voters first and foremost, because charity begins at home. A lot of these voters, this 90-something plus percentile people of color, are voters that look like me and us, staff here at Soluble. So, we have a duty, we have an obligation as Democrats to keep that turnout. It's very important. A 90-something percentile voting block, 90-something plus, whether it's 2, 3, 4, I'm not sure right now. It wavers, but it's at 90 for certain. It could go up or down, but it's definitely at 90 right now. And I would venture to say 90 plus percentile. That's just a heck of a number, where if you keep those numbers up as far as turnout, then when the election cycle come around, you have to gain more than you lose. And that's what power sharing looks like. Participating full-fledged in democracy, in the voting process. Now, we know the Republicans are doing everything they can to attack the free vote. And, so to that 90-something percentile, we know you're discouraged. There's still a lot of work to do. Equal justice, justice in policing, police reforms, having police by the book. We're not saying, putting police in harm's way of dangerous criminals. That's the spin. That's the spinning argument there. The winning argument is policemen doing their job by the book. The book protects them. And the book protects whatever suspect or assailant that they may be attempting to apprehend. The book helps them. So there's a lot still that's at stake for this 90-something plus percentile. We have work to do. As I said, it's not a perfect party. But as the world turns, as Dr. King would say, this moral arc, it bends. It's long. And so that's where we're at here. It's long. But at the end of the day, to have it to bend towards equality, which is what we're seeking here in America, we have to turn out. We have to turn out to get it to bend in that direction. It's going to require participation. This is not an abracadabra type moment. This is not an abracadabra magic wand type of thing here. You have to get out and participate. Engage in the process. Now, as I've also said, there's no time for finger pointing. If you really, and I'm talking to Democrats, the 90-something plus percentile, people of color in particular, there's no more finger pointing. You have to start with the man or woman in the mirror now. You have to take a long look at the person in the mirror. Yesterday's gone. And, we should be rejoicing. We should be glad it is gone now. And we have a path of participation that levels the playing field. But lo and behold, as I said, if we don't get the turnout, there's no time for the blame game, finger pointing, accusations of racism. It's over now. You are indeed, in this day and time, power sharing. And so the things that discourage people of color when it comes to, Democrats, we're going to have to discuss them. We're going to have that long discussion. But as I said, as a 90-something plus percentile voting block, you're going to gain more than you lose when you show up on election day or early voting or mail-in. You're going to gain more than you lose. And so with power sharing still comes, a responsibility, an obligation there. It's not an abracadabra thing, as I said. You have to participate. And now there's plenty of work to do, as I said. It's by no means a perfect party. the Democratic Party. There's still work to do. But, you know, the bright side to that is that, you know, the government is we the people government. And so when we send them up to Washington, D.C., you know, if we feel like they're slacking off or they're not, you know, holding to the things that they told us that they would advocate for to put into law, you know, we have to get on the phone. We have to, you know when they're coming back to their districts, and as constituents, you know, confront them, approach them. This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. When these Democratic elected officials come home to their home districts, give them the earful if they have it coming. Now, if they have a congratulations or if they have a thank you, you know, I'm proud of the job you're doing, give them that also. Let's rise above the fray as good Democrats, as stewards of the Constitution. Let's rise above the fray. And that is, as I said, rake them over the coals when they have it coming, when they're not doing what we set them up for. But at the same time, give them praise when they are. That's free. That's fair. What better way, you know, to encourage our side willing to work across the aisles? And as I've shown you, we've done that under the former administration when it was time to raise the debt ceiling. But taking a small deep dive into some of the things that have benefited people of color when it comes to the Democrats who are up on the Hill in the halls of power in D.C. Now, since taking office, the president he's provided billions of dollars for HBCUs. He's put, you know, plenty of black judges in office. Black unemployment is down. These are just some of the things that we have listed here. Provided billions of dollars for HBCUs, black judges. Sworn in, you know, than any other. Black unemployment is at a record low. Now, we can't lose much. We can't afford to lose much. And as I said, we still have a lot of work to do. And these are the two major parties here. And these are your choices. Now, Republicans, on the other hand, they've opposed legislation protecting voting rights and, you know, cutting student loan debt, and which by far affects people of color more in this country, student loan debt. So they've opposed that. They've cut Black history lessons. They've outlawed books by Black authors. Tried to redraw congressional maps to curb the voting power. So, I mean, you know, it shouldn't be a hard choice. This is just a, excuse me, this is just a small bit of facts that we have going forward to, you know, give you a reason to stay the course. And as I said, by no means have the Democrats finished the job, but that's just what the president is saying. Give me 4 more years, and that's his campaign slogan. Let's finish the job. And we can't have much of a drop off there. We pretty much make the Democratic Party when we turn out that 90-something plus percentile voting block. We pretty much make the Democratic Party. So, you know, imagine this now. That, you know, all these years fast forward from when the Republic was first came into being. Now, fast forward all the years, and here we are, a 90-something percentile voting block, people of color, and it's up to us to save the country. Because there's nothing on the other side if the former president is going to be the nominee. We've seen this movie before. social unrest, crony capitalism, actors in the administration not listening to the Joint Chiefs, cozying up to, authoritarian leaders on the world stage. An embarrassment for a free country. Embarrassment to see the leader of a free country doing these things. So there's nothing on the other side that we haven't seen. And we already know that we didn't like what we saw. So it only got one term there. And we're going to, bit by bit go into it again. We've stressed the fact that a conservative all those years ago, Franklin Roosevelt, he enacted legislation that brought, what we know today as welfare into being. And we've touched on, his fears going forward with the program, how it could be ripe with fraud. People would try to continue to get it even when jobs were available. And if we look back on this time, which we've touched on here at Soluble, was a time during the Great Depression. There were no jobs. Men were leaving their families to find work. Men were abandoning their families out of shame, out of the pain and suffering, because they couldn't find work and they didn't want to hang around, to watch the family decline. So welfare was put into being. We get it. And so we're going to take another deep dive into these sticking points, along with other things that we see happening in the country from the right side of the aisle. Now, as I said, keep in mind, we're going to watch real close, how the president is attacked from the right based on his record. Not what Hunter may or may have done, or who he may or may have business dealings with, may or may not have business dealings with. That shouldn't be an issue. Now, we get it from the Republican side. They never get enough. They're leading right-wing spin machine, Fox News, has just paid out a lot of money for lies. Putting out falsehoods on TV, to take the American people, to make it seem as if the election was tainted. But they just don't learn. They just don't learn. And so, we know what it takes to keep America moving forward. And, we're coming fast approaching election season. It can wear you down. It can seem as if, it seems as if we just had an election. Don't let it discourage you. There are, some parts about the system, some parts of the way the system works that can wear a person down, that can make a person give up. But this is what power sharing looks like. This is what power sharing looks like. So going forward, we're going to, go back over the issues once again, where we stand, right here and now with the deficit, the debt ceiling looming, to raise the debt ceiling so the bills can be paid. We're gonna line by line everything, past and present, that may discourage Democrats from turning out. And it's really important that you're paying attention, listening to the facts, because without that, how will you know? You're definitely not going to get it from the right. And where you don't get it from honest to goodness Democrats, if that situation were to arise, then Soluble is here. Soluble is here to put it into the proper perspective. So lend us an ear, and you have no reason to be discouraged. We went over the facts, the biasness, the danger that Republicans, still present to the Republic, simply by not coming out and saying in droves, this should be a chorus. There should be a chorus of naysayers stating, in fact, how flawed the former president is and how unfit for office he is. There should be a chorus. But right now, it's practically crickets. There's a lot of silence going on there. So pay attention. We'll continue to bring you the facts. We'll continue to keep relevant current political happenings in the forefront of conversation, so you can make an informed decision. As I said, we're fast approaching election season, and of course, this seems like a situation where there's no rest for the weary. But lest we forget and go backwards, we should be ready to show up at the polls, make our voices heard, for the sake of stay in that country that's in the forefront of the world for fairness, justice, and a democracy that works for all people, native born and immigrants alike. We thank you for joining us tonight here at Soluble. Stay tuned. As always, we're looking to solve. We're looking to bring you the facts, anything that's relevant. We encourage our viewers to, put forth questions. Give us a different viewpoint, a different opinion. We're well-rounded here. We've never sworn here at Soluble to have all the answers, although our goal is to ultimately, at the end of the day, solve it. Anything, whereas it's a sticky political situation or it's politics that doesn't work for all of us as Americans. And Soluble is here as a stopgap, if you will, to bring forth the truth and take all the spin out so you can make an informed decision when it comes to choosing a candidate that works best for not just, your home state, but for all of America. So in closing, we thank you for joining us tonight. We ask you to stay vigilant, stay aware, and stay tuned in, because at the end of the day, if it's someone somewhere trying to make a political viewpoint that's clear for everyone to see and make an informed decision based upon, is here at Soluble. So we thank you for joining us. Until the next time, this is Soluble signing off. Good night and God bless. Thank you.